For the first time, global ratings agency Moodys has downgraded U.S. sovereign credit rating. Moodys did not downgrade the U.S. economy even during the 2008 financial crisis. But rattled by President Trump's trade war and its potential impact on the fiscal position of the United States, Moodys has now raised the red flag. President Trump and his team have shown some signs of backing off from the tariff war. They have cut a 90-day deal with China, which effectively brings the initial 145% tariffs to 30%. India is currently negotiating a trade deal with the United States to avoid higher tariffs. The UK has already signed a deal, and the Trump administration has promised more trade deals very soon. But where does all this leave the global economy? Nobel Laureate and economist Paul Krugman vociferously opposed the initial tariffs. He is not impressed by the White House decision to walk back on the tariffs either. He still believes a recession is likely because of the uncertainty staring at businesses worldwide. Joining us to discuss the trade wars, the U.S. economy and a potential shift in the world order is the man himself, Paul Krugman. Thank you very much for joining us on CNBC-TV18, Mr. Krugman. Let me begin by asking you about your assessment as to what have Donald Trump's trade policies done to the U.S. economy.
Okay, so far, it's really hard to see the tariffs in the hard data. It takes time for them to show through, but we're likely to see a bump in consumer prices starting within weeks. So the inflationary impact of the tariffs is coming. You can see already that businesses have scaled back a lot of expansion plans, not simply because of the tariffs, but because of the uncertainty. If you ask me, what will tariff rates be 120 days from now? Nobody has any idea. And that includes Donald Trump. That includes his Treasury Secretary. And businesses are reluctant to make plans, to make investments on that basis. So, yeah, I think we're probably now maybe slightly down, but still maybe 50% chance of a recession, but certainly an economic slowdown, certainly a bump up in the inflation rate. It's stagflation. Maybe it's stagflation light, but we're definitely heading for some kind of stagflation.
Right. Could you give us a sense of your outlook for the U.S. economy for the full year 2025 as a result of Trump's policies? You're saying that there is a 50% chance of a recession. And what could be some of the contours of the stagflation, according to you?
Well, okay. I mean, a sort of best guess is that we'll have little to no growth for the year. Maybe slightly positive, maybe slightly negative. If it's slightly negative, we'll call it a recession. If it's slightly positive, we won't. But from the point of view of how it feels to people, it'll be the same thing. Probably higher, almost surely higher unemployment, and quite surely higher inflation. Even with this very modest step back in the tariffs, tariffs are going to probably add 2% or something to the consumer price index over the course of the year. So, we had an economy, 2024 was, by any normal standard, a terrific year. Solid growth, inflation that was a fraction of a percentage point above the Federal Reserve's target, not in a way that anyone really noticed. 2025 is not going to look nearly that good.
Right. How do you react to the news about Moody's downgrading the U.S. sovereign credit rating down from AAA? What are the warning signs here, according to you?
Okay. One thing that you do need to say is that if a rating agency downgrades a corporation's bonds, I take that very seriously because I suspect that they know a lot that I don't. When they downgrade a country, they don't know anything that anyone studying macroeconomic data and studying the fiscal situation and so on doesn't know. So in itself, I don't think the Moody's downgrade is particularly informative, except insofar as it's telling you that a lot of people out there are looking at the United States and saying, is this still the America we knew? I mean, America certainly has we have the resources. Yes, we have a lot of debt, but we have the resources to cope with that, to pay it down. And we've coasted for a long time on the belief that eventually our political system will do the right thing. If you look at the budget bill that appears to be on track to be enacted this week, this does not look like a country that can be trusted to do the right thing. It's a bill that will blow up the deficit with tax cuts when we're already at a basically, long run unsustainable deficit, supposedly paying for that with absolutely savage cuts in aid to people in need, which are probably, even with this government, not sustainable. Millions of people who voted for Donald Trump thinking he was going to make their lives better are about to discover that they have no health care. And this just we do not look like a serious country. And how long can we continue to coast on the belief that we will once again become a serious country when the reality is we look less serious by the day?
Right. What do you think Donald Trump's tariff policies and some of his trade deals will do to the long-term confidence in the America story? Do you think Donald Trump will be able to make corrections in the next few months? Or do you feel what he has done is going to shake investor confidence in the long term?
One thing to understand about the tariffs, aside from the fact that they are really very high, we say that he's walked them back, but we still, we've gone back from a few days ago, we had the highest average tariff rate in 100 years. Now we only have the highest average tariff rate in 90 years. This is not a really big deal. We're still extremely protectionist. We had very low tariffs just a few months ago, and now we have an average tariff of, depending on which numbers you use, something between 15 and 18%. And even if that gets walked back, the fact of the matter is that we now have shown that we are a country that can do stuff like this. People don't talk about it a lot, but we have a lot of agreements. We have free trade agreements with multiple countries. We have broader tariff agreements under the World Trade Organization, and we have just ripped them all up. The Trump administration has just said, "Oh, deals, schmeals, agreements, treaties, never mind. We want to do something different." And even if they end up walking all of it back, which does not appear to be in the cards, the fact of the matter is that we now know that the U.S. can elect people who will do that. I'm sorry, I am sitting in New York here. I say that the Trump administration treats international agreements the way New Yorkers treat don't walk signs. They're a suggestion, not something that you actually have to obey. And what country will ever really take us seriously when we make promises? What business is going to make plans on the basis that whatever the current policy is something you can be relied on to continue? So no, we don't undo this. It'll take many years of responsible government, which we see no sign of happening anytime soon, many years of responsible government to get back to where we were 4 months ago.
Right. Do you also see this as having a major impact in terms of rebalancing of global capital markets and the role that the US stock market plays there?
Well, tariffs, there's a lot of evidence on what tariffs do to trade balances. They reduce the amount of trade, but countries that impose tariffs on their imports also usually end up doing a lot of damage to their exports as well. And there's no particular reason to think that this is going to do a lot to reduce the U.S. trade deficit. The only way in which it might is that the dollar gets weaker because people stop thinking of the United States as a safe place to invest. And I guess we need to see how that goes. But again, this really is an earth-shaking betrayal of everything that people thought about the United States. America has, mostly for better, though in some ways for worse, been the safe haven. America is the place where your money won't be expropriated, the place where policy will be sound. And now all of a sudden, we are a place that doesn't honor its agreements. We're a place that, who knows what, and longer term, I worry, what happens to U.S. technology now that we seem to be systematically destroying our prestige universities, now that we seem to be cracking down on government funding of science. So all of this is, rebalancing is not the word I would use. I mean, um, undermining is probably a better word.
Right. So undermining of United States' position in global capital markets. Strong words from you there, Mr. Krugman. I'd also like to ask you about the weakening of the dollar. We've seen significant weakening against major currencies like the euro and the yuan and the yen. At the same time, higher volatility in the US bond market and stock markets. What is the trajectory, according to you, and what are the big causes for concern?
Well, I spent a lot of my career on financial crises in emerging markets. And what's happening in the United States looks like a sort of very low-key, but nonetheless qualitatively similar thing. It really does look like we're getting a bit of a sell America trade, as if people are losing confidence in the United States, losing confidence in the dollar. Tariffs normally make your currency stronger because you buy fewer imports and so less demand for foreign currency. Instead, the dollar has gotten weaker. And I look and say, well, I think I've seen this movie before. Now, it's a very pale shadow of what we've seen before. The weakening of the dollar by a few percent does not look like the 80% fall in the Indonesian rupiah in 1998, but it does have, it rhymes a little bit with what we've seen before. And again, incredible that that's happening here in the United States.
On that note, we take a short break, but don't go anywhere. This conversation with Paul Krugman continues on the other side, and we will be talking to him about Donald Trump's recent remarks on Walmart and Apple.